Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is a video to compare the HP Reverb G2 seen here, which is quite potentially one of the best VR headsets available on the market at the moment, thanks to collaboration between HP, Valve and Microsoft, and the HTC Vive Cosmos, available in a number of different versions, but I'm going to be talking to you about the Vive Cosmos and the Vive Cosmos Elite that you can see here. Now, both these headsets have similar influences. The original HTC Vive was obviously made in collaboration with Valve and was one of the first headsets to be a big focus for Steam in terms of the games that produced for it. And the HP Reverb G2 is now sort of the semi-official supported headset by Valve. Obviously there's the Valve Index, but the HP Reverb G2 features some design highlights made specifically by Valve that include the lenses and the speakers and a number of other interesting things about them. Now, these are two quite different headsets. The HTC Vive Cosmos has a modular faceplate design, for example, which allows you to swap out the faceplates in a number of different ways, but also to customize it in other ways. You'll notice, for example, it has a number of inside-out tracking cameras as standard, the standard one on the left, but then the Elite version comes with a tracking faceplate and uses the HTC base stations in order to provide a more accurate tracking. Now, I reviewed all of these headsets in the past, and I did a video on the Vive Cosmos on both the Elite and the standard separate videos, and came to the conclusion that the Elite was the one to buy. Now, the Reverb G2 is possibly even better than all of those devices, depending on your personal preferences. On paper, it's also fantastic in that, as I said, it offers the best visuals. You can get 2160 by 2160 per eye in terms of pixel count with the Reverb G2. And it offers inside-out tracking and a number of other highlights. It also has modern connections with a DisplayPort and USB-C connection connected to your PC, a 90 Hz refresh rate, and a number of other interesting spec highlights to it. It's really easy to set up thanks to those inside-out tracking cameras. It has 4 cameras, 2 on the inside and 2 on the out. But like the Vive Cosmos, and part of the reason why I'm comparing the two is the similarities, it requires setup where you need to plug in a control box to a power cable, and then that cable is connected to your PC. You need a USB-C connection ideally, but there is a USB-C to USB-A connection included in the box. You also need DisplayPort, where there's DisplayPort to DisplayPort mini adapter in the box as well. So a setup process that definitely requires DisplayPort and fast USB-C connection if possible. The HTC Vive Cosmos has a little control box which is similar to the original HTC Vive control box, basically an adapter that takes the proprietary cable that connects from the headset into this control box and then converts it into a DisplayPort and USB connection and a power connection that then plugs into your PC. The power plugs into the mains, and then you have DisplayPort. You can see here those cables connect up. So there are some similarities. The Vive Cosmos and the Vive Cosmos Elite both connect in the same way. So these are all wired virtual reality headsets with different tracking setups, essentially, is main difference. The Vive Cosmos has the standard setup, has front-facing cameras as external tracking cameras on it, and in theory should be easy to plug into any device, laptop or desktop, and use without much of a hassle. However, in practice I found those tracking cameras were very hit and miss. The Reverb G2 has 2 cameras on the front, 2 on the side, capable of inside-out tracking, and it uses Windows mixed reality style controllers. This headset, as I said, was developed with Valve and Microsoft, which means that it works with Steam VR and Windows Mixed Reality. It uses these large AA battery-powered controllers with large rings around the outside that are lit up. Now in the review I discussed the potential issues with these controllers in that they are a bit of a pain when it comes to games. Some games on Steam don't recognize them immediately. You have to go into the settings and tweak the controller settings and the bindings in order to get them to work, or download other people's settings in order to get them to work perfectly, and that can be a faff, so it's not terribly user friendly. However, there are advantages. Windows Mixed Reality means that you can press the Windows button, you get easy access to a Windows interface where you can then do things like click on desktop to launch a view of your desktop while still in the headset, which means that you can engage with Windows apps, and you can also do other things with easy access. Makes it a really simple process. It's also really easy to launch Steam VR games from there and do all sorts of other things really simply. The controllers are also comfortable to use and relatively hassle-free apart from those customization options. The HTC Vive Cosmos has some similar looking controllers, but obviously this is a VR headset. This is not Windows Mixed Reality, so it doesn't have that same Windows Mixed Reality goodness that the Reverb G2 does. Again, this is a battery-powered controller as standard, and the controllers on this are also chunky, as you can see. They have a ring around the top that lights up when you're using them in a similar fashion to the Windows Mixed Reality ones, and that's how the headset tracks them. But what I found and what I covered in my initial review is there's some real problems with the tracking of them. This is something they worked on with software updates, and it did improve over time. However, it really is going to depend on your room and your play area, and I'd recommend checking out my other videos on the Vive Cosmos to get an idea of what this is like. But essentially it meant that if the room was too light or too dark, it would have trouble tracking the controllers, and therefore you could lose controller tracking while in the middle of the game, which is obviously an incredibly jarring experience and a real problem. Also, if your rooms have plain walls, that can be an issue too, which is just ridiculous. The option is to upgrade or just buy outright the Vive Cosmos Elite, which has the original Vive controllers, Vive base stations, and a different faceplate on their front. That basically upgrades your controllers because the Vive controllers are much nicer. They're longer. They have built-in rechargeable batteries, they have a nice big trackpad, they're more comfortable and ergonomically designed in my mind, they're a premium feel, they're a much nicer looking controller, they're easier to use, they're generally all round better, that's my personal opinion of them, and they work with a lot more games because out of the box most games that are designed for Vive things will work with the Vive controllers, so they're a lot more hassle-free, both than the Reverb G2 controllers and the standard Vive Cosmos controllers as well. That's my personal thing. And also with the Elite tracking faceplate and the base stations, you get a lot better tracking, and I covered this in a lot more depth. Now, the Reverb G2 is interesting because it comes with industry-leading lenses. These are the best pixel density. So I said, for example, that the Reverb G2 has 2160 by 2160 per eye as the resolution. The Vive Cosmos, by comparison, gets 1700 by 1440 per eye, so considerably less. The Reverb G2 has two 2.89-inch LCD displays, whereas the Vive Cosmos has two 3.5-inch LCD displays. They're both capable of a 90 Hz refresh rate, and I'm going to leave more specifications in the description so you can check them out and compare them on paper. Well, what it means is that you get a better quality of experience from the lenses on the Reverb G2. It is a better looking headset in terms of the visuals that it delivers. In my mind, it's also a more comfortable headset. It has a nice, comfortable, large faceplate design to it that you can see that's easy to remove. It's held in place with magnets and it sits comfortably on the face. It's kind of a memory foam cushioning. There's a single cable that plugs into the headset from that control box that I showed you earlier on, and that can be connected and disconnected with ease as well, so you can basically strip this headset down quite nicely. But that faceplate results in a really comfortable fit. The visor also flips up. You can see I've flipped it up out of the way here, so the headband flips up nicely out of the way, and that's a nice design highlight to this, and something that you can do with the Cosmos too. I'll show you a bit later on, but basically it means that you can get the visor up and out of the way and see the world around you with ease, which is certainly something that's really enjoyable and a highlight to the design. Another highlight of the HP Reverb G2 is it has these off-ear speakers. So small speakers that are attached to the headset itself. They don't sit on your ear while you're playing, which means that you can keep your ears cool. You also can hear the world around you, but you still get good spatial sound. This is another thing that HP worked with Valve on to deliver good audio quality without heeding your experience. So obviously there's only one cable that plugs into the headset. That's a 6-meter cable, so it's nice and lengthy, and it means that you don't have loads of cables dangling around and getting tied up around you as you play with it, which is great. The IPD adjustment on it is done from a manual slider underneath, and then you have the ability to adjust between 60 and 68 in terms of the settings for IPD. Worth bearing that in mind, considering the settings for your IPD and whether you'll be able to find the sweet spot for it, because the range isn't massive, but it is hardware controlled. Now, the Vive Cosmos, as you can see, has a slightly different design. It too has that flip-up visor. It has a really soft padded faceplate, but one of the nags that I said about it when I reviewed it is that it was quite noisy. The plastic on it is quite noisy and can be a bit distracting, but there is padding on the top of the headband and on that faceplate and around the back. The visor also has a nice adjustment wheel, which makes it a lot easier to put the headset on and adjust it. You'll have noticed that the HP Reverb G2 uses 3 Velcro straps for putting the headset on and getting it comfortable and a good fit, whereas the Vive Cosmos has a wheel, an adjustment wheel at the back that basically just rolls in and out and allows you to sort that out. But what you will see also is that the Vive Cosmos Elite has those speakers, and I'll talk to you a bit more about those and show them off in a minute. As I said, the Vive Cosmos shines because of the modular faceplate design. This was potentially very interesting when it was first announced, and I don't feel like they've done enough with it. There are various different options in terms of the faceplate, but basically the standard one has multiple tracking cameras. You can pop that off and then you can install other options. The Elite faceplate is perhaps the most interesting of those, which basically reconverts the Vive Cosmos into more of a standard traditional Vive setup like the Vive Pro or the original HTC Vive. You're basically adding more tracking capabilities to it, but adding more hassle to it. So you obviously need the Vive base stations, which are tracking base stations that you put in your room. You need 2 of them to get the optimal experience in different corners of the room. So the hassle and setup of the Vive Cosmos means it is a bit more difficult to set up initially, and you need to make sure you have the space for all of these things, and it's not as plug and play, which is a problem. Unfortunately, the standard Vive Cosmos I wouldn't really recommend. I did like it when I first used it, but the tracking problems made it nowhere near as good as the Rift S in my opinion, and the Elite is certainly better. But when you compare it with the Reverb G2, where you only have to plug in the headset to your PC and then you're away, and the tracking cameras do a fantastic job of tracking in any environment based on my experience, both light and dark, then you'll find that the Elite Cosmos doesn't really make that much sense unless you have a dedicated space where you can set up the base stations and get them in a position where they're not going to be in the way all the time. They obviously require power as well, so that's another consideration. But once you've got them set up, you can then ensure you have accurate tracking. As I said, the Elite Cosmos version basically allowed for a lot more accurate tracking of both the movement of the headset and the controllers, and so the result was a much more enjoyable gaming experience. I also really prefer the Vive controllers to any others that I've tried, and they certainly offer the best. But what I found is the Reverb G2 tracked really well in both rooms with plain walls, in brightly lit rooms, and in other areas too. Now, I talked a bit about the sound. The speakers on the Reverb G2, you can see that they move out of the way when you don't need them and when you want to just flip them up. they also don't have any extra cables. You can see the cabling is basically run in the headband itself, so that it just plugs in with that single cable from the control box into the headset and then delivers the audio. What that means is you don't have extra cables getting in the way, and that you have a good comfortable fit, but those ear cups aren't sitting on your ear. They're just sitting off of it and delivering spatial sound into your ear with ease, and therefore you're getting a good sound but without the problems of having a headset or earphones sitting on your ears and making you hot. The Vive Cosmos has a semi-similar design in that it too has integrated speakers, and you can see they are a different design to them, where the Reverb G2 sort of has these angry modern metal looking ones with mesh on either side. The Vive Cosmos has these padded speakers. Those do sit closer on the ear, and that's why there's the padding on the inside, and they are comfortable, and I did find them capable of delivering a good enough sound, but you will see that there are cables on them, and they are a bit fiddly to get into a comfortable position, is one of the things that I'll note. I didn't find that terribly easy, and obviously you don't have the added benefit of keeping cool because they are there and close to your ear over time, which can be a bit of a downer. Now, the Reverb G2 has styling more similar to the Oculus Rift S. It has this black design to it. It has Velcro straps, which is kind of more like the original HTC Vive, but it also has those inside-out tracking cameras. In terms of the convenience of the setup, the Reverb G2 is a lot easier. You haven't got to worry about the external base stations. You just plug it into your PC using the control box and those accompanying cables, DisplayPort and USB-C. You do need to make sure you have a DisplayPort and USB-C connection, or use a fast USB connection with USB-A adapter. Make sure you meet the minimum specifications, so it's important to be aware that this is a high-end headset with a high pixel count, so it does require power for a decent experience, but it's still capable of running on a fairly medium machine as the minimum specifications. It's interesting because it basically offers sort of high-end experience in terms of the visuals, and yet it has this three-strap Velcro adjustment system, which is kind of old school now. But it does have a nice padded headband at the back, as you can see, and also a nice large comfortable faceplate at the front. It's designed to be lightweight too, so it is comfortable to wear for long periods. They are actually comparable in terms of weight. The Reverb G2 is slightly lighter than the Cosmos and perhaps a bit more comfortable, certainly not as noisy. Both headsets you can use while wearing glasses, so that's certainly a bonus. I actually think that the Cosmos is the better looking of the two, but it has certainly a more striking design to it. Again, this is obviously a personal preference. Feel free to disagree with me, and that's perhaps because I've got an affinity with the original HTC Vive because it was my first VR headset and I really like those original HTC products. But I feel like the Reverb G2 is certainly a more modern choice and perhaps the more sensible option. But it's weird that it lacks simple things like this rolling adjustment system. I preferred that on the Vive Cosmos. It makes fitment a lot easier. You basically just roll that wheel till the headband's in the right size, put it on your head, and then it's really easy to adjust. There's nothing more frustrating than putting a headset on and then having to mess about with multiple Velcro straps in order to get it a comfortable fit and stop it from moving around or from squashing your head or from falling down while you're using it. So the Vive Cosmos is an easier setup in that way, but I think once you get the Reverb G2 into sort of preferred position, you probably won't have an issue. So the Reverb G2 is easier to set up, it has better visuals, it probably has better sound, it's comfortable and capable, and because it has Windows Mixed Reality as an option within it as well as Steam VR, it will work with both. That means it's a lot more seamless in terms of the setup and it's more convenient to use. So the conclusion is that the Reverb G2 is the better of the two. However, I still think that if you're looking at the Vive Cosmos, you certainly want to get the Vive Cosmos Elite, but then you have to think about the base stations, and the controllers and everything else, so it all becomes very expensive. So at the end of the day, the Reverb G2 is the one I'd recommend. Be sure to check out the videos in the description though, and find out more about the Cosmos and the G2 in a lot more depth, and see action shots of all the goodness from that. Hope you found this video useful. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. Thanks for watching. I'd like to take a moment to give a shout out to my YouTube members, Meaty Keyboard, Raw, Sir Spawns Lot and Kraken Tortoise, for supporting the channel and helping me to produce weird and wonderful content for you. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Hope you found it useful, interesting, hilarious, or all of the above. Be sure to check out the description for other information you might find interesting, and subscribe and watch these other videos as well that I think might be useful to you, and have a great life.